If your blood runs orange and blue, this is the pod for you. You're listening to Orange and Blue Bloods, hosted by EJ Stewart and Tommy Beer. Let's get to it, New York.
So Tommy Beer joins me as always. Tommy, how you feeling? Do you feel good with a Knicks W now in Summer League? Do you got a little extra pep in your step now that the Knicks are no longer winless in Vegas?
Hang the banner, baby. Knicks are back. Knicks are back, in the famous words of Omari Stoudemire. In one of the ugliest wins you'll ever see in any basketball game. But yeah, good for the Knicks to get off the schneid, get in the win column. It means something for those kids out there hoping to keep their NBA dream alive. So, yes, we have a win to discuss. It may be our last victory to talk about for another 3 months or so. But let's enjoy it while we can.
Yeah, it didn't look like that team was going to go out there and route the rest of the teams left on their schedule, given what we saw in that last game, even the game that they won. But we will discuss that and plenty more. Of course, this is Orange and Blue Bloods, again, a New York Knicks podcast, Audacy WFAN original. It's a podcast you can get wherever you get your podcasts, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to give us a review. Give us a comment. What do you think about the podcast? Make sure you give us those 5 stars if you're enjoying the show, and give us a review on your streaming service. And make sure you check us out on YouTube. You can catch our full episodes on the WFAN YouTube channel. So make sure you check us out there as well. So, talking about this Knicks win. So the Knicks rallied in the fourth quarter against Orlando to get their first win at the NBA 2K24 Summer League in Las Vegas. The Knicks erased an 11-point fourth quarter deficit to take the lead on a Michael Foster layup on a dish from Charlie Brown with 7 seconds to go. The Magic then sent the game into overtime on a tip-in at the buzzer from the number 6 overall pick in the draft, Anthony Black. But the Knicks would outlast Orlando in the extra period with undrafted rookie Jalen Martin scoring the winning bucket. He had 12 points on 4 for 7 shooting. Charlie Brown Jr., who I mentioned earlier, again led the Knicks with 19. QJ Peterson had 19 points as well. He took 19 shots to get those points, but he did score 19. He had a big 3 in overtime. And Trevor Keels, Knicks' second-round pick last season, had his best day of the summer. He had 9 points in this win. So, Tommy, do you feel that it was even important that the Knicks get a win in Las Vegas? I mean, they came into this Vegas Summer League as one of the teams seen as one of the weaker teams. They didn't have any first-round picks on this team. They didn't have any draft picks from this year. Some of the veteran players they have on the team were kind of guys who haven't gotten that much time in the league, with the exception of Isaiah Roby. Do you think it was important for this Knicks team to actually get a win? These are some guys that we'd assume will be playing in the G League with the Knicks in Westchester, and maybe some of these guys on the two-way deal will actually get some time on the big squad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't want to make too much of it, as it's relatively unimportant in the grand scheme of things. But you feel good for the kids out there, the Keels and the Jalen Martins and Charlie Brown, who's been playing well. We'll talk about him in a minute. It's good just to, again, these kids are, it may not mean much to us and a million other things that we're watching. But, for these guys to wear a Knicks uniform to play in an NBA game, even though it's a summer league game, is obviously an important milestone that a lot of these guys have sacrificed a lot to get there. I think it's and also Coach Dice gets his first win. You want him to get some confidence under his belt. So don't want to make too much of it, but to credit where it's due as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Dice. That's actually who I was thinking about as well. Like, he is obviously one of Tibbs' right-hand men on the bench. So he's coaching this team. So it is nice to see him find a way to get this kind of ragtag group to play together, play hard. Maybe not as smart or as organized as maybe you would like, but they gave the effort. They made big plays late, and they played the right way for the most part to find a way to get this win. So, yes, definitely happy for Dice. Definitely happy for a lot of these kids that were playing. And, yeah, I think it was good for these guys to get a win because, like I said, to me, like, I don't see a lot of guys on this Summer League team that will be contributing much at all on the Knicks' big roster, but these are guys that will likely be in Westchester. Like, at least a good handful of these guys will be playing on the Westchester Knicks. And given who may be sent down there for various reasons, I don't know. I hope Deuce McBride's still not getting sent down there to get time. But if Deuce McBride's down there, or Jericho, someone down there, you want them to be playing with competent players. You want them to be playing with guys who can actually, not bring their game down when they get down there. So it's important to have a full, organizational structure in place where you have NBA players or at least competent players throughout. So you wanted to see some improvement. I was happy to see that. I was happy to see Trevor Keels contribute more. He didn't play great yesterday, but he played much better than the first 2 games. He did hit a big 3 in the fourth quarter. So I was happy to see him play a little better like I said he had to, and I thought he would. But this kid, Charlie Brown, man, I know he's a little older. I think he's 26 years old, but he's shown he can shoot the ball. He's shown he's got really good feel. I think what's been impressive to me is him and Martin's ability to pass as forwards. They're both about 6'6", 6'7", but they both made really good finds in the last 2 or 3 games, along with them being able to score the basketball. So I've been impressed with the way Charlie Brown has played, and I like what I've seen from young Jalen Martin. Considering he's only a teenager, I think he's a player that will be nice to follow in Westchester to see how he does next season, assuming the Knicks keep him around. What did you think of Charlie Brown and any other players that played yesterday?
Yeah, same thing. Through the first 3 games, Charlie Brown's definitely, with Daquan Jeffrey's sideline for the past 2 games. Brown's definitely been their best player. Through 3 games, he's averaging 17.3 points, 6 rebounds. He's also been impactful on both ends of the floor, averaging 1.7 steals and 2 blocks in 28.4 minutes. And he's been efficient, shooting over 51% from the floor, 78% from the free throw line. So those are good, solid numbers. And it's sometimes difficult to kind of put up counting stats in the summer league. But he's just been impactful, wherever he's been on the floor. Doesn't try to do too much. Part of that's experience, as you mentioned. 26 years old, went undrafted out of St. Joseph's 2019, but he's had a couple coffees with 4 different NBA clubs, played in 41 total NBA games. So, we've talked about it. The Knicks have 14 players currently under contract for next season. That 15th roster spot is currently available. We'll see if Charlie Brown gets invited to compete for that final spot. I assume the Knicks would be happy to have him. He may choose, maybe he gets a 2-way contract or an Exhibit 10 deal, with another club, or maybe an overseas. Part of this reason these games are so important is this is not only trying out for NBA squads, but obviously there's a ton of European international scouts in attendance. So sometimes these guys parlay positive summer league performances into guaranteed contracts, exactly. 500,000 in a car and an apartment in Italy or Russia or China, wherever the case might be. So, we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I got to admit that Brown has been a pleasant surprise. And ditto for Martin, 19 years old. Obviously, you got to keep expectations in check. But he's had a lot more opportunities since Jeffries has been sidelined. Last 2 games has played better. He's actually leads the team in minutes, 29 minutes a game, averaging 13, 3 and 3. So again, a long way from contributing on the NBA level, but as you know, definitely a guy I'll keep my eye on some Westchester box scores and try to catch the MSG shows Westchester games every once in a while. Keep an eye on him throughout this year, see if, he can kind of establish himself as he grows into his body and knocks the rust off. But there's definitely some potential, some intrigue there.
And you mentioned that open roster spot that's available for the Knicks. The reporting came out this week as well that the Jacob Toppin deal is a non-guaranteed training camp invite. So they're leaving that roster spot open. Like they're going to allow these guys to basically fight for that final spot. So I would expect, unless Charlie Brown does get another guaranteed offer somewhere else, or he decides to play overseas, which is again very possible given the money he may be offered, that he will be invited as well. I assume J.O. Martin would be invited as well, though I think that he'll probably play most of his time in Westchester, and then Toppin will be in that situation as well. But yeah, Charlie Brown, I mean, he's playing with it. He's a guy who said he's a little more mature. You could tell in his game, and you could tell, and how he's, it's funny watching these games. They oftentimes, they look like, sometimes AAU summer league games that can be very kind of helter skelter up and down. So when you see the guy that kind of looks out of place because of how organized and calm and how efficient he is, And then you look, oh, he's 26. Like that makes sense. Like the age gap makes sense in terms of like, wow, this guy, he doesn't seem that frazzled by this very chaotic situation. So, I'm gonna be curious to see if Brown gets a shot. Like again, I was impressed with how Jalen Martin has played over the last few days. Given his age, I think that he's going to be someone to follow. Talking about this game, was there anyone on Orlando that impressed you? I mean, I watched this game. And Jett Howard, a guy who I really didn't love that pick. I liked the player in the draft. I thought he went a little too high for my liking. I would not take it over Keontae George and Jordan Hawkins. But Howard, I thought, really had his best game of the summer. He had a monster first half. Did you see anything from him that you liked, or any other players in Orlando?
I mean, first, let's put it out there. The fact that team with those lottery picks lost to that Knicks team is not a positive reflection.
No, not at all.
That being said, obviously we're not going to put too much on the results. It was my first chance to watch Anthony Black kind of up close this summer. I would be lying if I said I was overly impressed. Again, you don't want to put too much stock in one summer league performance. Wasn't great offensively, but well-rounded game. I think he had double-digit rebounds, plenty of assists. So he contributes, all over the floor, and that's kind of what they're looking for. We'll see. But yeah, same. I thought Jett Howard was better, kind of exceeded expectations that I had from coming in. Liked his shot, and obviously Juwan Howard was in the crowd, and they talked to him a bit. You're getting a solid pedigree, someone who knows how to handle himself, someone who's familiar, not going to be awed by the lights, not going to you wouldn't think be out partying all night, understands kind of the NBA lifestyle, what it takes. Has been around NBA locker rooms his whole life, so that is a big advantage in that sense.
It's funny. I remember when I was in Vegas. I guess this was 2019 summer league. It had to be probably the last one for the pandemic. And it's crazy. Summer league is really fun. Have you been to summer league, by the way? I never asked that.
I have. Yep.
Yeah. I love the summer. I loved it. I think that if you're like a basketball fan, I think you'll really enjoy it. I know people say, do you love summer league basketball? It's like, even if you don't love summer league basketball, you'll enjoy being at the summer league because there's so many people there that also love basketball.
Now they have the NBA convention, the NBA con.
NBA con there now too.
Yeah, you definitely should go.
It's so much fun if you're an NBA fan. And I remember one of the cool things is, you're sitting in the stands and you never know who you'll be sitting next to. And I'm sitting in a section with my brothers and they cornered it off, but I'm in the stands in the Cox Pavilion sitting next to the Miami Heat contingent. And at that time, Juwan Howard was an assistant coach with the Miami Heat. I'm sitting right next to him, essentially. We're going, oh my God, it's Juwan Howard. And you kind of forget about him as a coach. I'm thinking about him as a, all-star NBA player, of course, member of the Fab Five. But to say that this is a guy that's not only coached in college, but coached at a high level in the NBA, has grinded his way up. So you would expect his son to have, the same kind of, grind, the same kind of skill set in terms of the skills, the development of his game. So, and he talked about that during the broadcast about how his time playing down, I think he said at Mount Vernon, was important. And again, a player that I was surprised how much Orlando liked him, because I liked him coming into this draft. I did not think he'd go 11, but after a slow start in the summer league, I thought he played really well. It was weird with Black. I feel like this was Black's worst game. I think there were games earlier this year where he scored more. I think maybe he ran out of gas a little bit. He looked a little tired to me. The Knicks I thought they did a pretty good job of. They picked up a lot of full court pressure, and I think they kind of frazzled him maybe a little bit. Did you like
him coming out of school? Did you think he'd be a mid-lottery pick?
I liked him. I thought he went probably around where I thought he should go. Okay. I think he reminds me a lot of Kyle Anderson, and some people may say, well, why are you kicking him at 6? If you can get a guy as good as Kyle Anderson, sure, that's a really good player. And to me, I think the difference for him though is he has a much higher defensive upside. So because he's I think he's a little longer than Anderson, and he can guard legit point guards. Kyle Anderson's a small forward. Anthony Black can guard 1 through 3, maybe 1 through 4, so small ball fours. So I like the Orlando pick. So it's weird with the guards they have because they already got Cole, they already got Suggs, but Fultz is still there. Yeah. They're gonna have to consolidate at some point. I don't know when that's gonna happen. But the one reason why I like Black going there was because he can play he's like an amoeba. He can play any position. So even if he comes in and says, okay, we know you're a point guard, but we're not going to play you at point initially. That's fine. He can play off the ball and be like a defender guy, a guy who's kind of playing a secondary ball handler. Like he can excel in that role as well.
As an aside, are you surprised as I am that Suggs hasn't been impactful in the league yet? Did you?
Yeah, it's tough because I'm a Gonzaga guy. I'll be honest. Like, I'm not stunned.
Okay.
And I say that only because as much as I liked Suggs as a player and as a Gonzaga player, because he took us in that championship game, but the problem I saw with him was jump shot was a little spotty. It wasn't consistent. It wasn't consistent in college. It hasn't been consistent in the NBA. And I thought his one-on-one handle and his one-on-one shot creation was a little overrated. He's really fast. So, like, he's able to blow by guys with his raw speed. But like there are a lot of really fast guys and a lot of guys who can guard really fast guys in the NBA. So I felt he needed a little more in his bag, and I think that he's kind of learned that very quickly in this league. Now he's gotten injured a lot, so that's been a big part of it as well. I thought he had some really good moments this year, so I'm thinking that he may actually surprise people in year 3. I think he played a lot better, I thought, this year than he did in his rookie year at the time that he was playing when he wasn't hurt. But no, I'm not shocked. I know a lot of people thought that he was almost like a slam dunk in that spot. I didn't think he was a slam dunk. I thought he could be a really good player, but no, I'm not shocked at Suggs kind of being maybe on the fritz, considering, again, they drafted the point guard so high this year.
They got to consolidate at some point. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but they, as you mentioned, Fultz and Black and Suggs and Cole Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah, so Knicks get a win. Again, it was good to see a Knicks win in the Summer League. We'll see if they get any more. They have 2 more games left to go in Vegas before they wrap up there. So we've seen a bit of a lull in activity in this NBA offseason as teams begin to settle in with their rosters following the early July additions. But the Knicks are reportedly still looking to offload one of their vets. Yahoo Sports, Jake Fisher says rival execs tell him that the Knicks remain, quote, engaged in trade avenues for veteran shooter Evan Fournier, and the Knicks are amendable to doing so as part of multi-team frameworks. So Fournier is entering the 3rd year of a 4-year, $73 million contract. He's owed a guaranteed $18.8 million this upcoming season. He then has a team option for $19 million the following season. Fournier began the year as a team starting shooting guard, which he was the previous season, but a slow start and poor defense relegated him to the bench in early November. After a rough stint in a reserve role, Fournier was taken out of the rotation completely on November 15th and saw little action the rest of the season. He averaged just 6.1 points per game on 33% shooting, 30% from 3 in 27 games last year. After the Knicks were eliminated in the playoffs, Fournier said, quote, my season was over a long time ago. It took me a good month to understand that. Obviously, there's going to be changes, and I'm going to get traded. That has not happened yet. Changes have happened, but he has not been traded. So, Tommy, first, do you think it is smart for the Knicks to use Fournier in a potential 3 or 4 team deal, as the way Jake Fisher describes in this report?
100%, and that's the reason he's still on the roster. And because the return of the expiring contracts having value is one of the byproducts of this new CBA. There was a point in time where, there was Theo Ratliff's expiring contract was a thing. And, like a decade ago where you needed those kind of expiring contracts to complete deals. It wasn't as necessary as teams had excess cap space and the teams weren't worried about being hard capped. But now with the new CBA ramifications, where you can't exceed a certain limit, where you're hard capped if you use your mid-level exception, et cetera, there's a lot of language there that makes it a little more difficult in terms of matching salaries. And having that expiring salary is appealing to teams looking to either facilitate trades or be a third partner in a trade, either dump Evan Fournier's contract and make other salaries match, and then you benefit by getting a pair of second-round picks, something along those lines. So I think for that reason, and also the most obvious is it doesn't look like there's anything on the horizon, but you never know we're one Woj bomb away from Embiid saying, "I've had it with this James Harden nonsense. I want to be traded." Luka, I can't believe they re-signed Kyrie. All that stuff is incredibly unlikely. The Embiid a little bit more likely than others, but again, who knows where the next superstar? Does Donovan Mitchell say, "Listen, it's fun in Cleveland, but they're not going to," in an interview, kind of offhanded way, put some pressure on the Cleveland front office. Having that contract in your back pocket makes those deals far more easier to consummate.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. The way I took this reporting from Jake was, to me, the whole big story, the storyline of the offseason right now is this Damian Lillard, Miami Heat, Portland Trailblazers standoff, where Damian Lillard is making it well known that he wants to go to the Heat and only the Heat, and the Heat are making it clear they want Damian Lillard, and the Blazers are making it clear that they don't like the Heat package, which means that a third team or maybe even a fourth team may have to be involved to finally get Dame Lillard out of Portland. I think hearing that the Knicks are amendable to using Fournier as part of multi-team frameworks when the whole big story of the offseason is a multi-team trade that is trying to be accomplished, I wouldn't be surprised in a month or a couple of weeks or maybe this week or whenever that Dame thing figures out that maybe the Knicks try to find a way to get in to that situation and to offload Evan Fournier in order to just offload his contract, or maybe, I don't know if they'd get a great player in return for him. I would be surprised by that. But I'm now keeping an eye out on the Knicks and wondering, whenever this Dame Lillard thing shakes out, is Evan Fournier involved in some way as an expiring contract to help the Blazers perhaps be more enticed to take on a Heat package in that situation? That would be something I'll be looking at.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how this plays out. A couple days, I've seen some, should the Thunder get involved, they have more assets they can send Portland away that obviously would fulfill Portland's need. I mean, essentially, the Thunder, we talked about the Magic having to consolidate their guards. The Thunder are going to have to consolidate all those draft picks. I mean, it looks great in theory to have 15 draft picks over the next 5 drafts, but what happens when you actually have to fill out roster spots? You're not going to cut Gilgeous-Alexander and Giddey and all these other guys that you pick on, Jalen Williams, and the list goes on and on to make room for these draft picks. So are you going to trade 3 draft picks to, from 12, 15, and 17 to move up to 10? Something like that is feasible. But at some point in time, they're going to have to make those decisions. So trading for a stud, is Dame and Shea an ideal fit? Not really. They kind of both need their ball in their hands. That's when they're most effective. But I'd love to see them take a crack at it. The other one that I saw today on Twitter, which made a lot of sense, I thought, was a Toronto deal in which the Raptors trade the key parts are Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent, and 2 draft picks for Dame, which I think makes sense. Jerry has always been one to, he did the famously the Kawhi trade that netted them a championship. He's never been afraid to trade for a star player that makes a team competitive at the moment. You surround Dame and Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby and Jakob Poeltl just brought back. Like, that's a legit team that can make some real noise in the Eastern Conference. Would it be devastating to trade Scotty Barnes? Absolutely. Even though he's looked like an absolute monster his rookie season, I think it was a little bit disappointing in terms of his progress.
Yeah, he plateaued a bit last year. A
little bit. So is he going to take another step forward, or is he kind of, this is where he's going to be at? That's something the Raptors would have to decide. Obviously, it'd be tough to trade him, but I think that's something. And then if you're Portland, is that enough to get back from Dame? You're investing heavily in Barnes, but I think that was probably the closest you're going to get to a legit guy that can be one of the 15, 20 best players in the NBA in his prime, and a couple of draft picks. So my hunch is, and then obviously the Raptors have to, would Dame show up? I just don't see Lillard, a guy who's built a career, professing his professionalism, and to his credit has been nothing but the consummate professional. Showed up, done his work. He had some injury issues, but never sat out back-to-backs, etc. Loves to play the game. I don't see him going to, especially a competitive. OKC might be a little bit weird, but a situation in Toronto where they would be, at worst, the third, fourth best odds to come out of the East. Real fighter's chance to advance to the NBA Finals. I don't see him just quitting and one, not showing up, and two, sacrificing $150 million. So my sense is that, like, before the start of camp, I think the Blazers are handling it well right now. Doing what they should do. They have a responsibility to the franchise, not just to Dame Lillard. They want to do what's best for him, but they want to do what's best for the team as well. I think it's something like we'll hear something weird because I don't know if Miami has the pieces to improve their package.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Blazers really are handling this well because, like, the Heat don't have the best package in theory as long as other teams get in. Now, I think what we're seeing is Damian Lillard's agents trying to depress the market for him by telling these other teams that Damian Lillard will be very unhappy if he gets traded there. My thing, if I was another team, I'd be like, so? I'm like, he's gonna have to show up. Like, what? Like, what is it? Is he really gonna pull a Ben Simmons?
A lot of people are unhappy when they go to work. They still go to work,
Right, exactly. I mean, is he gonna pull a Ben Simmons? Is Damian Lillard the guy who's all about, as I said on CBS Sports Radio today, Mr. Hustle, loyalty, respect, like John Cena? Is he really gonna pull a Ben Simmons and say, I'm not gonna show up? Whatever. Like, come on, we know that's not happening. So that none of this stuff I'm hearing would deter me if I was the Thunder or any of the other teams in trying to get into this Dame Lillard sweepstakes. You mentioned the Thunder. I just give people context of how many draft picks the Thunder have in just the next few years. The Thunder have 4 first-round picks next year. That includes their own. A Clippers are protected, a Jazz top 10 protected, so maybe that's on the fritz that they'll get that one, and a Rockets top 4 protected, which again maybe on the fritz, but both of those teams should be improved this year. So you would think that they may get all 4.
Which is why it's important. That's why the Rockets were so motivated to sign Van Vliet,
right?
Dylan Brunson.
Yeah, they don't want to give away another top 4 pick.
Correct. So if you're the Rockets, you had a choice to make. Are you going to be awful and make sure you have one of the 4 records and then pray for good luck?
That you get,
or try to be the 15th seed, because if you're the 5, 6, 7 slot, that's when you really get hurt. So that being said, I thought the Dylan Brooks contract and the fact that they had to trade those first round picks to clear space, it was a terrific allocation of assets. But that was at least the Rockets' rationale.
So you got those 4 first round picks next year. You got 2 first round picks coming the following year. They have their own pick. Then they have this weird Rockets Clippers swap where I think they get the best version of either of those teams. They have 3. Oh no, they have 4 this year too. This is how confusing this is. They have 4 coming in 2025. So you got their own pick, this swap with the Rockets and Clippers where they get the best of either of those teams. Then they have a Heat top 14 protected, and then they have a Sixers top 6 protected. So it seems they would get at least 3 of those. If the Heat, they'll probably get 4 because the Heat probably gonna make the playoffs for sure. So you're looking at 4 first-round picks that will all likely convey in 2025. And then you're talking about 3 more first-round picks in 2026. So you see where this is going. Like, you're talking about I just listed off, 9, 10 first-round picks in the next 3 years. I mean, you can't have 10 new first-round picks on your roster. So
just the next 2 years,
going to have to happen.
Only 6 of the 8 convey. I mean, are you going to have 6 first-round picks? There's a guaranteed contract, so you can't put them on 2 ways. What's your bench going to be? Just they're going to, and they're going to be competitive. They made the play in last year. They should be around a 40-win team this year. So it's at some point they got to do something.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think that Sam Presti is going to make a big move at some point. And when that happens, and if that happens, I think Leon Rose will be in the cut saying, I do have Evan Fournier here for anyone who's looking for an $18, $19 million relief on a deal because they can't find a way to fit a contract. Now just send us over maybe a first-round pick ourselves, or send us something over that we could use, and Evan Fournier could be yours. So I think the Knicks are handling this correctly. I will be curious to see how willing they will be to put Fournier in a deal like this and not have it be them getting, like you said, an Embiid or a Luka, or will they say, you know what, like if we got to unload Fournier, we got to unload Fournier. We're fine with being just like the 3rd wheel here or 4th wheel here in one of these deals.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think there's a decent chance he's still on the roster.
I was going to ask that, yeah.
Yeah, even by the start of the season, training camp. I should say, I think there's a difference between him being on the roster on the first day of the season and him being in a Knicks uniform on the first day of the season. I could see a situation where they say, listen, thank you for your service. go chill, in the Hamptons for a while, hang out in your apartment, and then if they, because they're going to keep their options open, hold on to that expiring contract, and then should the deadline, arrive and pass, and they still haven't found the deal, then agree to a buyout, let them join the Spurs to mentor Wemby, something along those lines. Or join a contender for the final 2 months of the season. But again, the Knicks aren't just going to give up the potential value of an expiring contract to keep the player happy.
Yeah, I think you might be seeing a Jay Crowder situation with Evan Fournier, where he gets sent home, or John Wall with the Rockets, he just gets sent home. And even if he's still on the roster, he's not actually with the team. So we wrapped this episode with bringing back another segment that we all know and love this week in Knicks history. And today, we don't have to go very far to remember this important moment. It was July 12th of last year that Jalen Brunson had officially signed his contract to become a New York Knick. Brunson's contract, a 4-year, $104 million deal, was controversial at the time, with some fans and experts saying the Knicks overpaid for a player who was undersized and had spent just one season as a full-time starter in Dallas. But Brunson proves all the naysayers wrong, posting career highs in points, assists, and three-point shooting in his first year in New York, helping the Knicks reach the second round of the playoffs for the first time since 2013. Brunson finished third in the NBA's Most Improved Player Award voting, and it is expected to be a key piece for Team USA as they head to Asia for the 2023 FIBA World Cup. So what a year, a difference. What a difference a year makes for Jalen Brunson. Last year, he signs this deal. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounding exactly what kind of impact he'll have on the Knicks. Then you come a year later, he's the center of the franchise. He is being talked about by Steve Kerr as being the centerpiece for Team USA. He finishes third in the Most Improved Player Award, and he's seen as one of the best point guards in the NBA. So take you back a year later, Tommy. You see, at this point, we had heard that Brunson agreed to the deal, but then you see the graphic, you see the press release from the Knicks, and you know they weren't going to do no real press conference until the next day where they did that weird town hall, whatever they called it. Either way, you see the press release signing Jalen Brunson signed with the New York Knicks. What were your thoughts when you saw that cross?
Sure. So initially, let's call it a month before the start of free agency, admittedly, I was on the fence about a Brunson signing. My assumption was the Knicks would have to go close to the full max they could offer to get Brunson to leave Dallas, because my assumption was Dallas would want to keep him, so they'd offer 5 years, $140 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. So my assumption was the Knicks would have to go 4 years, 100. I think the max they could, the most they could offer was like 128 million or 127 million over 4 years. So I was a little bit on the fence. Is this player worth that amount? That type of cap commitment. I still would have agreed to the signing if I was New York. Again, assuming that the other point guard targets didn't pan out. I thought Tyrus Jones was one of the guys they would look at. Could get him at like $10 million a year. Some other options. But the issue being, my only concern with Brunson being that it might be a little bit of an overpay because they would have to offer the most they could due to the Dallas restraints there. So when I first learned that the Knicks had agreed to a contract and it was only $104 million, thought it was a great signing very good signing for the Knicks. When we later learned that not only was it just $104 million, that it had decelerating, decreasing annual payments, which will pay Brunson less than $25 million each of the next 2 years, I thought it was an incredible signing. The one negative being that there's a player option at the end, which is when Brunson's going to cash in and be and be a max player. So when the Knicks initially signed him, I thought it'd be a very good signing. Obviously, a massive upgrade over the likes of Elfrid Payton and the dregs the Knicks had started at point guard. We've all seen the list of starting point guards the last decade. The Alonzo Triers, the Shane Larkins, these type of guys. Yeah. That being said, I never would have suspected Brunson to emerge as not just a good player, not just a great player, but one of the best players in the NBA, one of the best offensive, I should clarify, one of the, if not one of the best, most efficient offensive players in the league. Not only did he do it in the regular season, but is a proven now 2 postseasons in a row, a proven playoff performer. Here in New York, we know the difference between a guy that puts up good numbers in the regular season and then can't quite deliver on the big stage in the playoffs.
Right.
And we don't have to mention any names, but we know who that 2-time All-NBA, 2-time All-Star guy is.
There you go.
So for Brunson to step in and establish himself on that level and produce to the extent that he did, as efficiently as he did, really was incredible. And then you get all the other ancillary benefits, the leadership. Just compare him to the other diva point guards. I mean, the Kyrie Irvings of the world, the James Hardens demanding trades. Even Dame, who was amazing, has now demanded a trade. So when you have that kind of culture setter, tweeting last night where the pickup games in New York, just somebody that's embraced the city, just so much to love about that signing. And it really can't be overstated how important it was for the direction of the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it best in terms of just how important this whole move was. I think for me, I feel like Brunson was such a weird case for me because I remember, hearing, some of this I blame on Woj because remember on draft night, it was, the Knicks are moving all this stuff in order to make a max offer to Jalen Brunson. So you hear those words, considering what Brunson had done at that point in time, a lot of people were upset, including myself. That said, can't move heaven and earth for Jalen Brunson. In my opinion, I thought at that time. Now I would have moved heaven and earth to pay him the full max, but that's how I felt at that time. But then you kind of slow down. I didn't really care about the first round pick. I didn't care about it then. I don't care about it now. So that wasn't as concerned. I was just concerned that this was the player the Knicks were targeting. And my beef was, are you doing this because you really think Jalen Brunson is a star, or are you doing this because his name is Jalen Brunson? Like he's so close to the GM, so close to the coach, and that had this guy been Jalen Dunson, maybe he wouldn't be a Knick. That was my whole thing. Then I said, all right, well, this guy's gonna be a Knick, and I gotta watch this guy's games. I gotta really sit down and watch his games from last season. And I'm watching these games he had in the playoffs. I'm watching some of these regular season games, and it was immediate to me that this guy was going to be a difference maker. Now, I was worried about his defense, and that's why I kept yelling, you cannot start Evan Fournier. Of course, Tibbs started him anyway. But I was like, defense is a problem, but this guy is an offensive juggernaut, and he's going to be a big upgrade. Then when you see the money come down, like you said, you say, okay, that is a much more reasonable deal than the full max that Woj had been talking about on draft night that Knicks had done all this maneuvering in order to get to. They didn't have to do that. In fact, they used the rest of that money on Isaiah Hartenstein, who also ended up being a good piece for the Knicks last season. So I think going back last year, I was like, okay, I'm excited. I was excited to just not have terrible point guard play for the first time in years. That was one thing I was super excited about.
Yes.
And then to come back again a year later and see what Jalen has become, I don't think anybody could have expected him to be even this good. Like, do I think he could average 20 points a game? Yes. Do I think that he could move the Knicks towards the playoffs? Yes. Do I think he could make them a top 5 seed and have them in the second round of the playoffs where he's averaging 30 points in the second round against the Miami Heat? He's putting up big numbers against some of the best teams in the league, averaging 24 points for an entire season. No, I don't think anybody could have expected that. And I don't know if you saw, I was looking for the quote. I couldn't find it. I want to say maybe it was Zach Lowe, but if it wasn't Zach Lowe, forgive me for whoever had it. But he said that, I guess the word around Knicks brass is that the player that we saw Brunson play like in this year's playoffs is a guy that they think they will have all season next year. Like, they think Brunson played great during the regular season, but he clearly tapped into an even higher level in the playoffs. They think that we're on the precipice of seeing a guy who can average 27, 28 points a game in the league like he did in the playoffs. Like, do you think that that's a level he could reach this year? And what do you think about Knicks brass feeling that that's the player they have, that the guy you saw in the playoffs dominating the Cavs, dominating the Heat is the guy that we're going to see for, maybe not 82 games, but, 65, 70 games next year and postseason?
Yeah, see, that's the thing where the Tibbs aspect worries me. I think he can if he wanted to, but like LeBron could have led the league in scoring every year of his career too, but he chose to play a game that, to kind of maximize his ability to score when he needed to score, to pass when he needed to pass. So I'd like to see. I really wouldn't mind Jalen Brunson's scoring average decrease next season if that meant his minutes played per game decrease, especially if you sign quickly to a contract, which is one of the reasons why I think you should overpay if you need to for quickly. So you have some insurance. I don't want to see Brunson worn out. He did all that with a bum ankle in the postseason against Miami and basically dragged himself to the finish line. I'd rather things just kind of, organically develop, make a conscious decision to limit playing time, not treat every game in February and March and January as a must-win do-or-die game. Again, that's kind of the dichotomy. That's the yin and yang of Tibbs, the pros and the cons is you love him because he squeezes the absolute most juice out of every single second, every single game. But how does that benefits you franchise long term? Brunson's 26, so we want to keep him healthy for the postseason, want to keep him healthy long term. So those are the things that I would look into. But again, to your point, I think the ceiling's there. A buddy of mine, we were texting the other day, and he asked me, and I thought it was a good question. How many guys in the NBA would you trade Brunson for? There's not that many. I mean, if you want to rank him, he's not going to get ranked as high as those others. But if a team calls you up and says, listen, we'll give you this guy, we'll give you our guy, you give us Brunson. There are not that many players where the Knicks automatically say yes, So here's what I did. I just pulled up, I typed in, top 20 players, and here's a CBS way too early 2024 player ranking. You tell me I'll give you the guys, one starting at Jokic. Nuggets, obviously are not going to trade Jokic, and the Knicks would love to get Jokic for Brunson. Giannis, you'd much rather Brunson. Doncic, you'd much rather Brunson. Tatum, I assume you'd rather Tatum than Brunson.
Yeah, wait, you said Doncic? I'd rather have Brunson over Doncic? I'm trading Brunson.
Doncic is the guy you'd rather have.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I got that flipped. So
yeah. So Jokic, Giannis, Doncic.
Yeah, all those guys I would trade for. Tatum.
I think you'd rather have Tatum, right? Younger.
Yeah. I'd rather have Tatum. Part of me, I saw he's gonna get $300 million at his next max. And that's why I paused. But he's so dynamic offensively. You still got to do it.
Embiid.
Right. You got it. I mean, we're not going to. If that trade opens up, he's not going to get traded for Embiid. But
right.
But I think you would if all things were equal. Yeah.
How about this? If the Suns said we'll give you Durant for Brunson, who would you rather have?
I'm not trading Jalen Brunson for Durant. Not at that age.
Right? I mean that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Brunson. Who says no?
Thunder.
I think you're right. I think the Knicks might say no though too. I'm not sold on Shai.
Shai is a stud. I mean, I love Shai. So I'm a Shai guy. I mean, Shai is a killer. By the way, you mentioned the trade value stuff. Bill Simmons does his annual trade value rankings.
Did he do it this year yet?
Yes, he did it this year. He did it last month. 21. He's listed in the Group E, which is labeled "Let me save you some time." FUCKNO.
Who the 20 guys he had ahead of him?
So he's in a grouping where he's already ahead of Donovan Mitchell and Josh Giddey. Those are the guys that are 23, 22. That says a lot already. But then the guys that are right below him at 20 is Anthony Davis. At 19 was De'Aaron Fox. And that was the end of that group before you got into the budding franchise guys, where you had Paolo, Tyrese Halliburton, Evan Mobley, Bam Adebayo. I would not trade Jalen Brunson. I would not trade him for Anthony Davis. That I definitely would not do.
I wouldn't trade him for Fox either.
I wouldn't either. I also wouldn't trade him for Halliburton or Banchero.
That's tough, man.
I think Banchero is a lot more. Banchero is really good. He hurt the Knicks this year in some of those games. I'm not convinced he's like this 10-time All-NBA guy. The guy can score. He can rebound. Yes. He doesn't really defend.
He'll be a 10-time.
His jump shot's a little spotty.
He'll be a 10-time, 12-time All-Star, but I don't know if he'll play in a conference finals like that.
Right, right. So am I like giving up my franchise point guard for him right now? Not yet. Now he may show me something. I say, okay, he's there, but like I'm not all there with him. I'm not trading Evan Mobley. I'm not trading him for Evan Mobley. That's why I saw in the playoffs.
No.
Bam. I don't know. This list is very interesting. I mean, and then Jaren Jackson. That's when you get to the superstars. Now you're talking about Jimmy Butler, Jamal Murray, Joel Embiid.
See, that's the thing. Simmons has got Banchero because of his unlimited upside. He's only 20 years old. But then he's got Butler, who's 35. So if Brunson's in the sweet spot. He's just entering his prime, but he's
on a reasonable deal. Yeah, and he's on a reasonable deal.
Reasonable deal for the next 2 years on an absolute steal of the best contract in the NBA. Speaking of, and that's the one other thing while we wrap up this Brunson conversation.
Yeah,
makes the Brunson signing, and it's important to talk about in context, especially if we rewind 1 year to the day. The other options the Knicks had was giving away everything for Donovan Mitchell or giving away almost everything for DeJounte Murray, which a lot of Knicks fans wanted to do. 3 first-round picks the Hawks gave up for DeJounte Murray. So for the Knicks to get the better player and not give up a single draft pick other than, the pick swap at 11 and with OKC, yada, yada, yada. They did have to do some maneuvering, but obviously not 3 future first-round picks.
And remember, DeJounte Murray just re-signed on an extension with the Atlanta Hawks. He's making more money than Jalen Brunson on his extension. He's signed a 4-year, $120 million extension. So, and that was a veteran maximum extension that he signed. It was essentially the deal we were talking about with Jalen Brunson that we were trying to get the Knicks not to do. So essentially, you're talking about signing him to a more expensive deal and trading all first round picks to get a worse player in DeJounte Murray, a good player, but not as good as Brunson. And he's showing some knuckleheaded tendencies. We saw him get suspended in the playoffs. Not maybe the character guy Brunson is at all either. That would have been a massive mistake by the Knicks if they did that. And that was something I thought they should have did at that time. So I would have been dead wrong. I would have preferred Murray over Brunson given everything. But you kept all your assets. You signed him to a cheaper deal. And he played better than Murray. I mean, he couldn't have worked out better for the Knicks.
And that's the thing when you talk about that Simmons trade value. Like, is Banchero going to impact your locker room the same way Brunson does? Is Evan Mobley going to impact your locker room the same way Brunson does? Like at some point in time, that has to come into this decision, and why the Knicks would be like, nah, we're good with your guy's great, but we're cool with our guy too.
Yeah. I mean, when the list came out last month, I saw 21. I was pleased. I was like, oh, 21, that's really good. Like, but then you really look closer. You're like, I mean, could he have been, top 20? Could he have been top 15? Like, even some of the names that he had ahead of him. Yeah, even the names some of the names ahead of him.
That has to be the highest Nick that's been on there since Prime Melo.
It has to be. Yeah, I mean, I know Bill. He does this list every year.
And he hates the Knicks, so you got to factor that into.
That is a part of Bill Simmons' thing as well. But man, it just speaks to just how awesome Brunson has been at this point and how he's really changed the direction of the franchise. So yeah, we celebrate a year with Jalen Brunson officially as a New York Knick. And that's going to do it for this edition of Orange and Blue Bloods. Thank you guys again so much for checking us out. Of course, if you enjoyed this episode, you can catch all of our episodes on wherever you podcast, including the free Audacy app. Make sure you hit the auto download feature on your streaming service to get these episodes every time we drop. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. You can find us on the WFAN channel, where if you listen to this podcast, you say, hey, I want to watch this episode. You can watch the whole episode on the WFAN channel. So check us out over there as well. Tommy, let people know they can find you.
At Tommy Beer on Twitter.
And you can find me, EJ_Stewart on Twitter, Action EJ on Threads, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you guys again so much for checking us out. For Tommy, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below.
Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest podcast ventures. Links will be in the descriptions. And as always, thanks for watching, and we will see you in our next video.